Welcome back to the Resolution Room. Whether you're navigating conflict in your relationships, your work, or within yourself, you're in the right place. Let's step into the room. This episode explores the invisible architecture of childhood communication. The words children hear repeatedly become the framework for their inner dialogue, emotional regulation, relationships, and self worth. The conversation connects neuroscience, attachment, identity formation, and everyday language choices in practical, accessible ways for parents, educators, and caregivers, and anyone else who are shaping young minds. And to walk us through all of it is my very special guest. Cara, can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me here. Oh, yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Cara Tyrrell, and I am an early childhood educator who focuses specifically on the infant and toddler years, birth to 3, while the brain is developing its linguistic center for success for the rest of its life.
Let's back up because I did have you on my very first season. We had an amazing talk about, I guess people will call it positive parenting in mainstream media. Let's talk a little bit about how you got to this point of writing this book.
Absolutely. Yeah. So little people have always been my people. I taught preschool, I taught kindergarten. I had my own kids and raised them and hung out with other families as a nanny for a spell and would just realized that as much as the entire parenting experience needs to be kind of washed with this idea of relationship first and expectations second, those first 3 years are the most defining because we can really build the brain to be ready to take on the learning that happens as long as they feel safe in their body, their physical safety, and safe in emotionally in relationships. And then I looked backwards in my education and I said, oh my gosh, the linguistics degree that I got in college is how I'm going to help people understand how much this matters, because how we talk to little people before they can talk back is how we build that brain.
Mm, I love that. And I just love the full circle moment of a degree that you had ended up coming back into what you're doing. Same thing for me. Like there was a assistantship I had during my PhD program. And I was like, this has nothing to do with what I want to do. And when I tell you I implement so much of what I learned there in my work today, it's unbelievable. So when you say, again, how we talk to kids become how they talk to themselves, what does that mean in practical terms?
Yeah. So remember, when we're talking about kids under the context of my work, we are talking about kids who are 1 year old, 2 years old. Okay. They're tiny people who have the limited capacity to use words on their own. But that doesn't mean they don't think, and it doesn't mean they don't feel. In fact, our words don't get translated and interpreted as cognitive pieces of information. Kids interpret our words and they turn them into meaning identity based statements. So, say we are out at a restaurant. Okay. This happens a lot. I see it, I hear it. This happens to me because I have a beautiful goddaughter who's 2.5 and behaves appropriately for that age when we go out. And we were out at Easter and she got really loud all of a sudden. Like the whole restaurant just kind of did all eyes on us, right?
Yeah.
The tendency is to say things like, shh, be quiet, you're being too loud, you are loud, you are bothering the table next to us. Can you feel how that feels?
Feel it now because I was that kid.
Okay. Yeah. And it's a kind of subconscious speech reaction that comes from us being triggered and very often going back to that experience from childhood. So, what I teach is how to use words in that moment that redirect the behavior, but they don't cause the identity conflict because those words make kids feel, I am loud. I am a bother. Right? These aren't identity statements we want grounding into their little being when they're just starting to learn who they are. So we use reflective language. And her voice was very loud. So my voice got very quiet. And I whispered in her ear, your voice is very loud right now. And she looked at me and I said, "Wow, your voice is really still loud." And
Mhm.
then she looked at me again, and I was able to bring her down. And then her body got big, right? When her voice came down, her body started being, she was hungry. Of course, her body started to get out of control. And I reflected back, wow, your body is out of control right now. If you choose to sit on my lap, then I can choose to get you a cheese stick from the bag while we wait. There's nothing that we don't have to use our words the way they were used on us. It is a choice, and we can think this through when we're looking at our little people, with the base question being not how do I want them to behave in front of others, but who do I want them to believe that they are?
Mm. Yes. And gosh, you just again, just saying this makes me reflect on how I've subconsciously internalized a lot of that. I feel myself sometimes in certain spaces. Naturally, my voice will get a little loud. Not that I'm even angry, but I don't know, maybe I'm excited about the topic or whatever it is. And instantly, if someone kind of gives me a look or a shush, I feel myself just shut down. And I hate to say that as a grown woman, it still affects you. So then what do you think many adults underestimate about the developmental power of everyday language?
Well, especially during these years where, in the neuroscience world, we call them pre-verbal, right? Not talking yet, or emerging verbal. So they're the cute phases, right? Where they're putting together their 2 or 3 word sentences, like, "Mama, more, please." That's emerging verbal. But before they're a comprehensive communicator, meaning they can put together full sentences and have conversation back and forth. During that time period, the implications for how they're going to understand and use language are already starting to design in the brain. But as a general population, we overlook that. Now, this is not a fault of anybody, right? What we don't know, we don't know. And parents are not sent home with a baby and told, "Did you know you're actually their first teacher? Did you know that everything you do and say and the relationships you model and the way you speak to your partner when their child is just around is defining for them how they believe relationships work? Did you know that the way that you speak to yourself is the way that they believe that people should?" My I have a really good friend, really, really good friend, who recently said something to me that broke my heart. Now, she is in her late 50s, okay?
Mhm. Yeah.
And she just said to me, "Cara, do you know that I just realized that I am a good person?" And I said, "Come again? I've known you for 25 plus years. I could have told you that back then. Why
Yeah.
didn't you tell me then? I would have built you up." And she
Yeah.
said, "I didn't realize until just now because my mother," here we go, right? "My mother reflected the worst parts of herself towards me, and that's who I believed I was." And I went, "Okay, this work that I'm doing is more important than ever." Just because kids are small, just because they don't have language, just because they might be kind of quieter, right? Not those outgoing ones, but those quieter ones. We can't overlook those years. 80% of the size of a child's brain is fully developed by 3 years old.
Really?
90%
Seems so yeah, that seems so young.
by 5. Okay, so we send them to kindergarten and we're like, they're going to their first teacher, their first educational up. Nope. All of that, not just so the size of the brain, right, from its tiny hood to 5 years old is 90% grown. And those neurons that they are born with in their brain that need connecting, which is where the learning happens, they 1 million neural connections per minute between birth and 3 years old.
That is insane.
Yes. And so here's the thing. Here's the answer to your question, okay? Parents, teachers, caregivers, foster parents, nannies, whoever you are out there that has that kind of deep emotional relationship with a little one in your life, those connections are going to happen. Whether they happen and connect positively, I'm someone who knows how to do hard things and try again when it doesn't work the first time, or whether they happen negatively. I'm too loud, I'm too much. When people shush me, I just need to go in the corner and be quiet. But they will connect.
Mhm. I have a question that might be a little bit of a tangent or off topic, but I'm curious about your perspective, even if it's not exactly your expertise. We've had conversations in the past about accountability, reparenting ourselves,
Mhm.
and things of this nature. At what point is the balance between I'm an adult now and I can't let these childhood things dictate my life for decision making and just truly, I guess, understanding how it impacts you as an adult?
I love this question because what you're talking about is a personal development journey, and parenting is the most personalized personal development journey you will ever go on. You don't realize that's what you're signing up for. But every human being that you bring into the world kind of does that mirror reflection back at you a bit and asks you to go deep. You either get the choice, but you either get to choose whether you're going to allow the little people in your world to help you refine into the person that you really want to be, or you can continue to allow them to trigger the power struggle. And what I mean by that is, like, I have a kiddo, one of my littles when she was little, um, but she was right about everything. She really was. Like, she was just practical and she was wise and she was right about everything. And she'd call me out on stuff and she was right. Now, being corrected by your child is not a good feeling, right?
Yeah.
So often I would go back to my old patterns and I would bite back, or I would be habitually reactive, or I'd just like shut her down. And then I'd go, wait a minute. She's giving me the opportunity to be better. She's
Yeah.
giving me the opportunity to realize that she's as much my teacher as I am hers. And we're in this together. And that's the big idea here.
Mhm, mhm.
Is that just because you're the adult and you brought the tiny person who can't do anything for a hot minute into the world, you're building a team. And the people in your house are your teammates. And when you do it that way, I call it the collaborative discipline method, right? When you do it that way, oh my gosh, everybody learns, everybody grows, and everybody says, I know my strengths, I know my struggles, and we can figure this out together.
I love that. And when you're talking earlier about like the little things we do around them and they pick it up whether we know it or not, it's so funny. I remember my nephew when he was like 2, he's my little buddy, so he follows me everywhere. And I didn't realize every time I had a moment of frustration, if I spilled something, dropped something, I would go, "Arr." And suddenly every time he did something like dropped a toy, he would growl. And I'm like, oh my God, no one to blame but myself.
But
Oh
that's
my God.
amazing. That's amazing. I mean, we've heard other transfers
Yeah.
that are a little bit more shocking. They usually end up in the swears category,
Yeah.
right? But what you were modeling was emotional frustration. Now, we all experience that. This idea that kids are always supposed to be happy, joyful, and good, well, that's a fallacy. The world doesn't work that way because it doesn't work that way for us.
Mhm.
So that is what an amazing door open you had there, right? So the next time he does that, you can say to him, "Oh my gosh, you make the same frustrated sound that I do. That's my frustrated sound too. Hmm, this is the sound I make when I feel worried," right? So then you can start to teach emotional awareness through this sensory experience that toddlers are brilliant at figuring out.
That's amazing. I love that. Definitely gonna keep that in my pocket. So talk to me about the 5 I sentences kids need to hear every day.
Yeah, so we're coming back to that identity building. So this is exciting, right? So kids need to hear you tell them what you believe about them. It's not enough to feel it in your and have like that little blooming heart moment and be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this child in this moment."
Mhm.
Say it out loud. "I love you right now. I love watching you play with that toy. It brings me such joy to see you have fun." That's for me, the I love you is like top of the list, right? Because you're building relationship and building connection. Now, let's take one that you want to have in your back pocket when your toddler makes you a promise, because they do, but they don't really know what promises are yet, right? And you're like, it's time to clean up, and we got to get in the car. And they say, 2 minutes, 2 minutes more, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And you say, you would like 2 more minutes before cleaning up. I believe you. I believe that in 2 minutes, you will pick up your toys. When we say something and we make it true, we keep our promises. You're building character, you're building follow through and relationship. I believe you. I trust you is another really powerful one. Ugh, I love this one so much because kids need to feel trusted. We want them to feel heard and seen and understood. And this is the dialogue that goes along with conscious parenting, right?
Mhm.
And kind of this next level awareness that we're raising human beings, which in this world is more essential than ever. So building trust means expressing trust. I trust you when you tell me. I'll think of a really good one for that. It's not popping up into my brain right now.
Yeah.
But and then I hear you and I see you, right? Which are the two things they really need. So consider a 4-year-old who gets home from preschool and they're emptying the 48,000 pieces of art they created that day out of their backpack because that's what they do. Look, 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 look what I did. Look what I did. Look what I did. I made this. I made this. I made this. Every single time. Stop. I know it's a lot, folks. I know it feels like our world's coming at us 1,000 miles an hour. But the good you're going to do in the 2 minutes it takes to do this far outweighs whatever text you had to send. I promise you. Stop, make eye contact, say their name, and then say, I see that. That's amazing. Or, I hear you. You really had fun today.
Mm.
Tell them you see them. Tell them you hear them. They'll actually stop jumping up and down. Because if you don't recognize, they're looking for attunement. They're looking for connection. They're really not looking for recognition. They don't actually care that you think the flower that looks like a firehouse
Right.
is beautiful. They're
Right.
looking for relationship. So give it to them. So I see you, I hear you, I believe you, I trust you, I love you.
Mm. In your experience, which of these statements tends to be the hardest for adults to express consistently?
Definitely, I trust you. Definitely. Because there's something, for some reason, it's societal. There's something very contradictory for our brains at the idea of trusting a toddler, right?
Mm.
Have they earned our trust? Are they
Mhm.
trustworthy? Like, we believe these are things that come later in life, except here's the deal, folks.
Hmm.
If you want your teenagers to trust you, well, you better start when they're toddlers. They don't flip a switch when they turn 13 and be like, I guess now would be a really great time to tell my parent everything.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
gets practiced along the way. So, yeah, that's easily the hardest
Yeah.
one. We were at the grocery store recently and my goddaughter was not being safe in the cart.
Mm.
And then so this is how the conversation went, okay? Um, it's your job to sit. It's your job to sit to be safe. And she was not. And she was doing her thing. And obviously, I'm not pushing the cart. We are stationary at this moment.
Right.
And I said, if you choose not to sit, then you're choosing to come up here and get buckled because she was in the big part. And and we went through the whole thing and she was like, I sit, I'll sit, I'll sit, I'll sit. And I said, and she did. She did. And
Mhm.
then she started to sit back up again. And I looked at her and I said, I trust you to stay on your bottom. I trust that your body knows how, and I believe that you can do it. She can get up again. Yeah. But what she was lobbing at me was a power struggle in the making,
Right.
right? So when little people do that, we think that they're trying to start a fight, essentially, but they're not. Tiny brains, all those neural connections we talked about, are trying to make sense of, if I do this, what does my grown up do? If I do that, what does my grown up do? Wait, this one turned out really great. I liked the way that felt. Well, I'll try that again next time. This one did not turn out really well. I did not like the way that felt. I'll
Right.
make a different choice next time.
Right.
It's not that frontal lobe cognitive, but that's what's happening. And if they lob something at us and we shut them down and be like, I'm the grown up here, so because I said so,
Right.
they get confused and they
Right.
don't know how to finish that cause and effect experiment, essentially, that they were in the middle of.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens when these types of statements or affirmations only come through achievements?
Ooh, ooh. Wait, tell me more.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like you only say I love you or I believe you in those moments where you feel like they earned it or they did something big or magnificent in your eyes
Yeah,
versus just saying it all the time or every day.
right. Yeah. So, well, what happens is we end up lopsided, right? We end up identity one-sided, which is never a
Mm,
good thing. We end up believing that our sense of achievement and identity and accomplishment is based on somebody else's experience. And so, you know how they say in exercise, if you do something on the right side, do it on the left, you got to stay even?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's the same with this stuff. Yes, you're going to be pulling it out in those fun, beautiful celebration moments because we should. But in the struggle bus moments, is actually where it's going to land the most. And
Mhm.
so, yeah. And so, so for example, say we've made cookies, right? It's Christmas time and we've had a beautiful afternoon and we've made cookies and there's a lot of them on the counter. Well, the kid just wants to grab and eat, right? But that wasn't the point. The experience of cookie making was
Mhm.
the thing, it was the activity.
Right.
And so you say, I know you really want to have another cookie right now. That is not a choice. After dinner, you can have another cookie. Here's a container. Pick the one that you're going to eat after dinner. We'll put the cover on and we'll put it in a special place and it'll wait for you then. I believe that you can wait until after dinner. And I trust you
Mhm.
not to go up on get your step stool and like people say to me, aren't you giving them ideas? And I'm like, sure. Sure. But don't we all have ideas? Like, what do you think toddlers are? They're incredible little problem solvers is what they are,
Mhm. Right.
right?
Right.
So what I'm actually giving them is an opportunity to practice self-control, which is a self skill that we really need in life. And
Mhm.
if they manage to pull it off, well, we can celebrate the heck out of that later, you
Right.
know? So
I like that.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was a good analogy too with the working out on
Yeah.
both sides. That was clear in my mind. And so when we're talking about it, I think a lot of the conversation has been geared towards parenting. So when we talk about like educators and caregivers of other people's children, um, how can caregivers maintain authority without like shame-based communication?
It's all exactly the same.
All the same.
It's all the same, and that's why the book is, it's called Talk to Them Early and Often, but then the the second line says, "A caregiver's guide to intentional language development," and we chose caregiver very intentionally
Mm,
because, um, between birth and 5, kids are surrounded by their parents, their teachers,
mhm,
or some type of center program caregiving like a daycare, right?
mhm,
Now, the research says that if you are a family that chooses to or has to put your child in care, that they are going to spend between 35 to 40 hours a week with your child,
that's a lot.
right? Children see their childcare provider, their 2-year-old classroom teacher, their preschool teacher as an extended family member. So it really is all the same. And
Mhm,
my like utopian desire, if I could wave my magic wand on this world, would be that children heard the same thing at home as they do at school, right? That
yes.
people use the same language, that they hold the same boundaries, that the parents and the teachers communicate about which strategies are working really well for that kid right now in which setting, because children's developing brains are seeking consistency, and the job of what we call code switching, meaning, okay, in this environment, there's one set of expectations, so I need to adjust my social norms, behaviors, and choices. And in this environment, it's completely different. That's exhausting. They're like toggle switching. So, yeah, if there could be consistency across their primary two, that's all they have, right?
Mhm.
Environments in those early years, oh my gosh, the difference we would see and the stress it would take off the adults too.
And I mean, how do you go about if it's not I think a lot of cases it's not aligned between the places, so, like, how do you manage that? Is it just
Well,
simply talking to the teacher or but the thing is, like, I feel like the teacher is not worried about just how you wanna parent because they look over multiple kids and everyone
yeah,
has different styles, so how do you juggle that?
it's tricky business. I mean, the first thing is, as a parent, you need to find the placement that feels right for your child. And I've
Mhm,
actually had experts on this come onto my podcast in the past. And like, how do you choose the right preschool? How do you choose the right? Is a center based the right one for my kid? Do I have a highly sensory or a highly emotional child? Is a home based program that's going to have at max 8 kids the better choice? Right? Is a nature based program better because they're very kinesthetic and their gross motor needs to be in motion all the time? Picking the right program is the first step to erasing some of those barriers that
mhm,
cause struggle. Because what typically happens is a teacher reaches out to a parent when the child is having any type of struggle in the classroom.
right,
So now you're in problem solving mode already. Joey is really struggling. He screams at the top of his lungs anytime it's time for transition to this way or that. In fact, yesterday he got so upset he pushed his chair over. Right now, you've got an issue that needs solving. Whereas when a parent comes to a teacher, it's usually from a different tract. They
mhm,
are more they're more soul based, right? Parents are saying, I've noticed that my child seems to be struggling with this. They cry a lot when this happens. I'm concerned that they need some more support in this area.
mhm,
And so, if we continue with this societal model based
mhm,
on parents are showing up for the character and the soul of who their kid is because they care about their long term well being, while teachers can only have the resources, and this is the trick of it. teachers don't have one or two kids to focus on, and so maybe they have 16 toddlers in that room or 22 preschoolers in that room. And so if kids are bopping along and doing great, they just let them keep bopping along to do great because they
Right.
have a limited number of resources to then emotional resources and time resources to attend to certain things. So that outreach is going to be more solution based.
Mhm.
The time of year where this kind of can equate is when parent teacher conferences roll around,
It's always fun.
right? Yeah. But, if Susie's doing a great job and she's been doing a great job, well, now you have 20 minutes of undivided attention to share space and talk about how Susie's been doing a great job. So when I do professional development workshops for teachers, and actually in the book, I've incorporated what I call teacher to parent toddler talk tips.
Okay.
So I'm making it easy for them. They don't have to spend any more energy. They just say, "Oh, let me share this tip with you that we use in our classroom,
Mhm.
and it works really well. Maybe you could try that at home." And so it's a bridge that's built on that connection and that teamwork feel, as opposed to, "We've got a problem. What are we going to do about it?"
Mm, mhm. And how can adults regulate themselves before responding to dysregulated children?
Isn't that the biggest question of them all? Well, the first thing is to be fully aware of what's happening. Okay. Our brains lie to us all the time because we as adults go into problem solving mode immediately. But if when a child is having an issue and they're dysregulated, the first thing you can say to yourself is, dysregulated kids are not available to learn. You've already grounded yourself into or reminded yourself of what's happening in front of you. And then your nature will take over because the people who choose to work in this industry, gosh, they all deserve halos because they're certainly not getting paid for it,
Mm,
right? Not well enough. They don't,
yeah.
the equivalent, I'm not getting into that.
Yeah.
Then your nature will take over and you'll be like, wow, I have a little compassion all of a sudden for this kid. I have some empathy for this kid because a challenging child is being challenged by something. And my job is actually to be the detective that can figure out what it is and help them move back to a regulated state. So that sense of mindfulness and that sense of awareness is key. But like I said, our brain is a sneaky little devil because our brain believes we are in distress. So kicks off that fight or flight reaction for us,
Mhm.
tosses us down to that cortisol producing part of our brainstem and encourages us to react badly. So I have a hack. Okay.
Yep.
This is my favorite. This is my
Listen
favorite.
up, folks.
All right, listen up. Um, I don't actually have any water left in my bottle, so this will be a reenactment of my hack. uh, but this is what I do when I'm aware that I need to respond appropriately, but everything in me just wants to bite, not bite, use bitey words or
Mhm.
yell or like get really big and sharp with my body. I go like this. I need a drink of water. I take my water bottle and I take a big sip. I hold it in my mouth for 4 seconds and I count to 4, like think box breath in
Mhm.
meditation, right? I hold it in my mouth for 4 seconds. Well, you know what? You can't hold water in your mouth and not breathe. It's not possible. So here I am breathing in for 4 seconds, Then I swallow and I exhale for the other 4 seconds. I have pattern interrupted my cortisol reaction. Now, the next thing that I do or say is 100% my choice. Bonus, kids watch you do this. My favorite is when I hear from a preschool teacher who sends me a message and they're like, I had a kid who lost his mind because someone knocked down his block tower and walked up to me and said, I need a drink of water, right? Because they watch you self-regulate
Yeah. Yeah.
and they
That's adorable.
realize it is a strategy that all human beings can use, not just adults.
Wow, I love that. So, again, taking all of these thoughtful ideas we've been talking about, and again, just moving forward from where we are, how can adults begin changing communication patterns they've inherited?
Yeah. Well, I think everything begins with education. I mean, I happen to be a voracious learner. I just love learning. And not everybody is, and I get that. But what you don't know, you don't know. And if you don't know something, then you can't do better. You have to tell your brain new information for it to want to make different choices. And it's why I wrote the book. The first part is all the science of early language learning. So, that awareness we were just talking about. Like you can't ever, you read part 1 and you can't ever look at a 9-month-old again without and think to yourself, oh, my words don't matter. There's nothing happening yet. Like you never will
Mhm,
be able to.
mhm,
Now you
mhm.
know better, you do better. The second half are 25 intentional language sentence starters that align with your goal. If your goal is connection and collaboration, I got you. If your goal is to turn on their brain so they can do some of their own cognitive problem solving, I have sentence starters for that. And so that's how we do it. And we don't overwhelm ourselves. That's the key. Once you know and you have evolved into a decision that you're going to do something differently, I highly recommend people choose 2 new language patterns. That's it. Out of the 25 to start, identify what your subconscious language pattern is. And every time you hear yourself say, stop, that's not okay, you're going to replace it with, that's not a choice right now. And you're just going to start with small replacements until those become what you hear naturally coming out of your mouth. Then you can add, then you can add. And before you know it, you're going to have kids who feel more connected to you, who trust you and respect you more, and
Mhm.
they behave better.
Yeah. And I love the approach because on this platform, we're all about replacing reactive strategies with proactive ones. But we can't deny the fact that sometimes they still happen either way. So, what does healthy repair look like after a difficult interaction?
It's my favorite. I love it. I love apologizing to children. It's such an opportunity to teach them about humanity. So, there's 2 answers to this question. So, if the breakdown happens and then there's a huge meltdown that follows. I had a little one, my middle kid, who when she melted down, girl, she melted down. Like when she was gone, it was a 45-minute wait before that kid could come back to center. Okay? So in those cases, you really got to wait. Whether the till they are fully regulated. And in Claire's case, it was like somebody flipped a switch. It was so weird. You would hear her still kicking and screaming and thrashing and crying, and then all of a sudden you'd hear silence. And she'd bebop back down the stairs and be like, "Hey, mom," and I'd be like, "Wait, what? We're we're good? I'm not
Right.
good yet. I don't know if I'm good yet, but you seem fine." Like she worked those emotions through her body. So the key to effective repair is that you're both ready.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
So if I hadn't fully recovered because I've been listening to her cry all this time, not the right time to start the conversation. Maybe After dinner, when you're outside playing for a little while before bed when everybody's good. Hey, remember earlier? You got really upset. I yelled when you got upset. We ended up both being even more upset. It took you a really long time to calm down. It took me even longer. I don't like it when we communicate that way. It doesn't feel good, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the role I played. Next time, I'm going to make a better choice before we get there. Okay. Now, if you're in it and they don't react to you, I still want you to repair live time. Okay. So let's say, oh my gosh, I had one recently that happened to me and I it's of course not going to come to front of mind, but let's say that, okay, we'll use the example from earlier. Let's say you're at the restaurant and she's getting really loud and everyone's eyes are on you and you say, "Shh, be quiet, you're being too loud." And you catch yourself. And you hear yourself say it and you go, dang it, that wasn't right. In that exact moment, stop, look them directly in the eye and say, oops, that's not what I meant to say. My brain took over, but what I meant to say was, then say it the way that you want it to land. Because
Mhm.
it's like an auto forgiveness. It's like it just happens and kids understand it. You don't have to belabor it. You don't have to have a conversation about it later. It's just kind of like that auto repair.
Yeah, yeah, I like that a lot. And building on the idea of, correcting yourself in the moment or just kind of having that backtrack moment of parenting, what would you say to parents carrying guilt about things they wish they had done different?
Mm. So I see this more when kids are a little bit older
Mhm.
and now they have another kid, right? And this time they're getting the education around it. This time they're choosing to parent differently and they're feeling guilty about what they did to poor Lainey, who is now 12 years old. And what I say to them is, well, first of all, you did the best you could with what you had in that moment. But secondly, the way memory works, and this is so fascinating, is that we all have, like, Lainey and her parents were part of the same conversations, the same experiences, right? But her mom and her dad are going to have different peak memories from that experience. We can all go to Disney together. Everybody's peak memories are going to be different, but everybody remembers how it ended. It's fascinating science. So, what we often hold on to as parents, our kids literally have no memory of. They don't think about it. They don't go back to it. They don't process it. It for them didn't land as a peak memory. It did for us because we have kind of that gut check, that moral and that value core center where we go, oh, that was my mistake. We hold our mistakes. They maybe didn't. So if it's really eating at you, bring it up. You just bring it up and say, listen, when you were younger, I made some decisions that honestly, I just don't feel proud of them. And I'm worried that they had an impact on how you see yourself in the world. And then give them a couple examples and they'll tell you immediately, I don't even remember that, mom, whatever. And then they'll go back to what they were doing. Or they'll say, huh, thank you for saying that. And now you have this incredible gateway. Now you can have a conversation
Mhm.
and you can help them let go of something if they are holding on to it, and you'll let go too.
Hmm, okay. And so for your signature resolution question,
Mm.
sort of summing all of this up, what is one communication pattern you believe families must pause, examine, and intentionally reshape if we want the next generation to experience healthier relationships than the last?
One communication pattern.
Hmm.
I think I have a very strong core belief that family communication is at an all-time low,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that the pattern that people need to focus on is reinstating it intentionally. And the very best way that I've ever experienced it is over a consistent family meal. Because what happens during these family meal times is the expectations are so low, right? That real conversation can happen. Then during that moment, during those evenings, have kind of a formulaic plan for the conversation and then let it go where it goes from there. So, my favorite is I worked with this family. They are amazing humans and they go around the table and it's almost like Thanksgiving every day, right?
Mhm.
And so the best part of my day today that I was grateful for was. And the hardest part of my day that felt like a struggle was, and everybody gets to say theirs. And then what do you know? The rest of that dinner experience, they're supporting each other. They're processing each other's stuff. Everybody feels heard. Everybody
Mhm.
feels seen. Everyone feels, some people walk away feeling like they have a plan for how to do it better next time. And yes, your toddlers can be part of it. They might say the same thing all week long. They, I grateful mommy gave me cheese stick in my lunch. Great. It
Mhm.
was hard at nap time, I cried. Perfect. Like, expressing themselves
Mhm.
is what you want, and so that's my tip.
Love it. This, of course, has been another amazing conversation. I'm so excited for everything you're doing. Oh, anything coming up that you want to share, or where can you just people follow you in general for your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. So well, first of all, I have a podcast called Transforming the Toddler Years. And so if you're in it, if you're living it, that's a great resource for you on a weekly basis to go just get a little hit and be like, yep, I can still do this. Um, um, but if you are a teacher or somebody who's in the higher ed world and you're really looking to support the teachers who are raising these kiddos in the classroom, then head on over to the link in the show notes. It's my website, caratyrrell.com/speaker. And there's all these different ways that I can support you with pre-service and professional development and plenary speeches. And yeah, I'm very excited to continue sharing this message. I say, I am Cara, I speak for the toddlers.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
If this conversation gave you something to reflect on, consider taking a moment to rate and subscribe. It helps more people find their way into these conversations. And if you'd like to bring a conversation like this into your organization or community, you can submit a speaking request. And if you prefer to start on your own, visit the Resolution Library for a collection of digital resources designed to help you put this into practice one step at a time. Access to our community, speaking requests, and online resources can be found at our website linked in the show notes. Until next time, keep building in the quiet because that's what will carry you forward.